Good morning and welcome back to Miniature Monday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we are continuing our look at the Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine subscription from Games Workshop and Hachette Partworks magazine. I don't remember exactly what their name is, but if you are not familiar with it, Hachette Partworks does magazines out of the United Kingdom and will do these sort of subscription things. They've done it for knitting or cooking or, all sorts of things. And usually it is a magazine accompanied with some sort of item related to it. Like if it was cooking, it would be a cooking utensil. In this case, it's, Warhammer miniatures. Now, I saw this. I thought it would be kind of interesting just being able to do a whole bunch of different Warhammer combat patrols. And so, I subscribed to it. Basically, every month, because I did do the deluxe subscription, does run about $80 for 4 magazines. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at what I received as part of the 3rd shipment. Now, this is issue 7 through 10, and it's going to have models, magazines, extra bits, and we'll kind of talk about it and whether or not I think it was a good deal. So, with that said, before we get started, do make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of gaming topics, whether it's miniatures, board games, role-playing, or anything in between, and I'd love for you to come along. In addition, we do live streams where I'll paint miniatures or we'll talk about different subjects, even do some deep dives into some rules. So make sure you're subscribed so you can come along and see that. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started. All right, so as I said, these are magazines. They do come in a plastic bag containing everything that you need. Now, this one being issue 7 is a little bit interesting because of the fact that, as you can see here, it says part 1 of 2. It's 10 termagants and a Ripper Swarm. So basically, in this, you're getting basically 5 termagants out of the magazine. Plus, you're also getting a 12-inch ruler. So I was not expecting this. I actually kind of like these. They're flexible. They're, I don't know. They're just themed a little nice. They've got the Warhammer symbol across there. I like it better than the old, if you played Warhammer, I think through, say 8th edition, they used to give you these plastic sticks. I don't know. I like these because of their flexibility, so you can go around corners, things like that. But, again, this is worth $1 or something, but I like them. So that was actually nice to get. Which I also think means that in this magazine, the play rules are going to start talking about how you move in inches as opposed to spaces. So we'll take a look at that. As far as the miniatures are concerned, they're standard Games Workshop miniatures. They're a lot nicer than the termagants I remember from, say, 4th edition era. They could be the exact same, but I don't think so. I think these are the ones that were redesigned for 10th edition. So, again, nice dynamic poses. Lots of good details. These are going to be fun to put together. Speaking of putting together, I do have build videos. Those are going to be coming out soon. I have been recording me building all of the different models. So, you'll get to see that as it goes through. They're just going to go up as shorts, but again, something to, stay subscribed to. All right, so what do we have in this magazine? Obviously, we've got how to build your termagants. Looks like this is going to cover both parts 1 and 2. You'll notice one thing I didn't pull out of here was bases. You'll see those in the next magazine. I do think that's not a good way to do it as far as an individual magazine is concerned, because at this point, like, say you were just buying it off the shelf, well, you're just getting the models, you're not getting any bases for them. So I think that was a mistake on their part, but not much I can do about it. All right, we then have some fiction, more about, actually, not necessarily fiction, it's just kind of like the fluff text. Talking about Space Marines and how they work. We've also got some more Tyranid background. Again, lots of really good pictures. Space Wolf making an appearance. Synapse organisms, so talking about your giant Tyranid beasties. And now we get some actual fiction. So, decapitation. I will have to read that later. And as I said, for our play segment, it's talking about moving and measuring. So, talks about the ruler, how it's broken down, how to actually measure from, model to model. So, you're going base to base. Let's see. Movement and coherency. Where you can move, engagement range, moving whole units. See, I like how this magazine is breaking everything down, especially for new players. Threat ranges and line of sight, so using the terrain cards that appeared earlier. And then waking the swarm. So taking your barb gaunts, which you actually got in the last shipment, and your Infernus Marines. So then talking about line of sight, moving, walks you through each of the turns, and then talk about who achieved victory on that. All right, cool. Not a bad start to this one. That's issue 7. Then we get issue 8. So we're going to get another frame of miniatures. So this is just one frame, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, it looks like. Yeah, so regardless, it's part 2. Okay, at a normal cost, you're looking at $30 for 2 magazines. Regular retail on 10 termagants and a Ripper Swarm is $45. So you're saving about a third on that. But when combined with the rest of the shipment, we'll talk about that towards the end. Anyways, again, more Tyranids. I'm just going to set that to the side. All right, so what do we get out of this magazine? All right, so now we're getting some painting. No building, because remember that was in issue 7. But, basically give everything a coat of Wraithbone. Still not talking about primer, which a little annoying. Then going with the burgundy on all of the sort of armor plates. And so then at that point, your models should look like this. Now, I have been a bit behind, so I have not gotten started on painting these models yet. They're primed, but I am definitely behind. I'm probably going to be following these instructions just to keep consistent with it, but I still haven't entirely decided. All right, we then have some more background. So Departamento Munitorum. So talking about, looks like, just like logistics. Super exciting. All right, we then have some Tyranid information. The Second Tyrannic War. Battle for Eandon, so bringing some Eldar into the mix. Icar 4, where Marneus Calgar defeated the Tyranids. The Great Devourer, so, Tyranid Hive Swarm. And then talking about how Tyranids destroy a planet. Alright, we then have some collection information about termagants. How to name your unit of generic, mindless, dino bug creature things. Alright, we're then going to talk about charging and melee combat. Okay, so how to get your melee units into base contact, what happens if you fail, and then doing a scenario where you have your Von Ryan Leapers, Termagants versus an Infernus squad. And so again, it's going to break down the turns, moving, fighting, and what happens. All right. That is issue 8. Issue 9. Issue 9 is going to be pretty easy. Why? We get paint. Alright, so we have our first metallic. So this is Retributor Armor. And then we've got Abaddon Black. So we've got black and gold in our mix now. Now, I am going to be changing these out. I don't think I've shown it before, but this is what I did with the original paints. Basically got one of these bottles and, just put it that way. So, made it a lot easier, in my opinion, because I like dropper bottles. I don't like paint pots. But that's me. It is not required. You can run paint pots if you want to. I don't want to. All right. Let's take a look at our magazine. So real quick, this is $15. Each of the paints is going to be between $5 and $8. So essentially this one's a wash. If not, quote unquote, losing a little bit of money. You do get the magazine, which I do think is worth something. I'm not entirely sure what it's worth, but it's worth something. Alright, so we go back to painting. Okay, so alright, so now that we've gone beyond blue and Wraithbone, okay, we've got some black. Where should you put it? Good job. I mean, they're literally walking you through how to paint this stuff to look like it's from the box. I'm okay with that. So, breaks down where you should be with your work in progress. I'm not there yet. Then doing some of the Tyranids. This is good. That's a lot of painting instructions. And then where you should be in the paint progress on that point. All right, then our reading, we're going to talk about Space Marine chapters. So what's the difference between a chapter and a legion? Who are some famous chapters? Our second bit of Silver Templar fiction. And then we've got, for our gameplay instructions, advancing and falling back. So an advance move in 10th edition is you've moved, but you can't shoot or do anything, so you're going to declare an advance, basically to get some extra movement. I actually kind of like that rule, because it's like, I got to get my models across the board. There you go. Alright, so advancing and falling back, and then we're going to do a pitched battle between our Space Marine Captain, an Infernus squad, some Termagants, some Von Ryan Leapers, and some Barbgaunts. So they're ramping this up. And then it'll walk through everybody's turns. We've got Space Marines, Tyranids, basically a couple of turns each. All right, that is part number 9. And then our final selection. All right, so this one, we're going to get a Librarian in Terminator armor. Now, this guy alone is a $40 model. So, between... so, obviously, that's a huge savings. You know, $15 on the magazine price for a $40 model. So, you're saving, you know, over half. But you combine it with everything else. So there's still one more thing to show you past this magazine. But right now, just on the magazines, like I said, $80. And with this guy, so $40 plus $45 for the Termagant. So that's $85. Just to keep it simple, say, $10 for the paint. So that's $95, and, you know, I know it's more than this, but we'll just say $5 for the ruler and the paintbrush. So that's going to put us at about $100. So we've saved about 20%. Most of the time for Warhammer stuff, you're only going to see about a 15% discount. Rarely will you see any discounts from Games Workshop themselves. So, I mean, for that big a discount, that's actually not bad on this particular shipment. But our Librarian, let's zoom in a little bit. This guy's, again, a lot of really good detail, runes in on the book. We've got these hoses and this skull on the chest piece. These giant purity seals. Overall, I like this guy. This is going to be fun to put together. Alright, let's set him to the side. Let's take a look at our magazine. Alright, so obviously how to build. You know, and then jumping right in on how to paint. Notice Macragge blue, Abaddon black. You know, in this case, you know, first layer is Macragge blue, so they're just like, go to town. You know, they don't even go through like the steps they did on the other one. They're just like, nope, get it in there, get a couple of layers on. Then start putting the black. Start putting in the Retributor armor, brass, gold, whatever you want to call it. And then start adding in some Wraithbone. Alright, this page does not want to turn very well. Then that's where your Librarian should be. Alright, we then got some lore on the Ecclesiarchy. So, which is interesting that they talk about the Ecclesiarchy when they give you a Librarian and not a Chaplain, but whatever. Talking about Devastators, which they have not introduced yet. I'm not even sure you get any Devastators out of this Combat Patrol. Whatever. They're giving you more information, which, actually, you know what? That makes sense, because it's like, hey, here's other things that you can go buy. Dreadnoughts, a repulsor. We then got our collector page for the Librarian. Then for play, we're going to talk about different weapon abilities. So, in this case, the Librarian has a Stormbolter. The Barbgaunts have their Barb Launcher. You know, so it's going through talking about how to deal with different weapons. Weapons with special abilities, so devastating wounds, things like that. And then Scenario 6, Mind over Matter. So you have your Winged Tyranid Prime, Von Ryan's Leapers, and Termagants versus a solo Librarian. I don't think that's balanced. But again, it'll go through the turns, walk you through, and then talk about, okay, what to do when either side wins. All right, so that's magazine 10. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about. So with all of these magazines, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but they do all have these hole punches here on the side. And that is because they also give you this binder to put everything in. The only thing it doesn't give you is a way to store these outside of just sliding it in. I would have liked, like, it would have been nice to have like a little pocket over here, but let's be honest, it's a binder. They're probably keeping it pretty cheap. But as you can see, we've got all these dividers here on the edge. Build, paint, read, collect, play. So you are supposed to tear all the magazines apart and split it up. Now what I've done, I still need to finish the build on the barb gaunts, so I left it here in the front. But the rest of my build instructions are behind the build tab. So as you can see, everything is color coordinated. They do have, everything numbered, so you know how to put it in. But we go build, and then paint, read, collect, and finally play. Now, these dividers are just the same kind of paper as the magazine pages themselves. I would have liked something a little bit more substantial. Either a heavier card or maybe even a plastic one. I don't get to make those decisions. But overall, it's not bad. There's plenty of room so far. It looks like it's sort of full on the rings, but I think as everything gets in and kind of compresses, and then the folder, stretches out, it's definitely not going to fit the entire magazine subscription. I know that it's going to need some extra. I know they sell extra binders over time, so there is that to consider as well. But say the binder, which, actually, I guess I didn't really show this off or be on the cover. So on the cover, we've got the Leagues of Votan, Gene Stealer Cults, Imperial Guard, and World Eaters. We've got, I think this is just generic Chaos, Eldar, Tyranids, and Space Marines. The only thing it doesn't have... Oh, wait, nope, there it is. Orcs. Ha! I totally... Now I feel dumb. I'm like, oh, they don't have orcs on here. No, it's actually just spread out a little bit better. So, anyways, those are the 9 combat patrols that you'll get out of the collection. So, the only downside is it's a 2-ring binder, not a 3-ring. But I think that's a UK thing, not, so they're not gonna redesign it for the US market. That's the only thing that I would want changed on the binder. Otherwise, it looks just fine. It'll be super useful. I'm not sure if I will keep all of the pages. Probably toss build stuff later on. Keeping paint stuff might actually be pretty good, just to kind of see some instructions over time, see how they develop that. But overall, this particular one, when you add in the folder, I think you could easily charge $20 for that. A little bit more than I would like. You can go to an office supply store and buy a binder for $5 or something, but you get the fancy graphics on it. So easily those are going to charge about $20. So about $120 for everything here, if you follow that kind of math. So honestly, not a bad deal. Still happy with it. and definitely need to get working on it. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Put a comment down below. Let me know. Are you subscribed to this yourself? What do you think about this method of, of getting models and product? So far I'm happy with it and I think it's kind of interesting, but I'd absolutely love to hear your opinion. And, let me know how you want me to proceed as far as like painting. Any suggestions, any ideas of what you would like to see these Tyranids and Space Marines come out looking like. So, with all that said, thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new here. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.